Welcome to Terence MacSwiney, A Life, created by the students of Terence MacSwiney Community College in Knocknaheeny. Episode 1, The Path to Lord Mayor.
We never know what history will say of us, who will be heroes or villains in the books of the future. Do not worry, I'm not here to judge. Far better read scholars than I have argued the merits of mankind and come up with various answers. I am here to tell you a story, or at least to fill in part of that story. It's more than a story, it is a part of history. It's a part of our history. Terence MacSwiney. When his name is mentioned, you are surrounded by romantic notions of nationalistic heroism, a man who died for his country. But his death was not on some blood-stained battlefield, with comrades in arms by his side, marching into a far-off, deafening battle cry. No, his death was a slow and silent one, in the loneliness of a Brixton prison. His battlefield was the political one. Some would say a fiercer battlefield there never was. But on with our story. Some historians out there will argue with our story, telling us...
So that's not what happened at all?
No, she never said that.
And you're possibly right, but some of it will be factual and some will be dramatical, but all of it will be a story. For is that not what we Irish are? Storytellers.
How did Terence MacSwiney end up as Lord Mayor of Cork? He became Lord Mayor through tragic means, but before we get into that, let us look at who he was before he became Lord Mayor and the Terence MacSwiney we know of today. He was born on the 28th of March 1879 at 23 North Main Street, Cork. MacSwiney's mother, Mary Wilkinson, was an English Catholic with strong Irish nationalist opinions. He was one of 8 children. His father, John MacSwiney of the parish of Cork, had volunteered in 1868 to fight as a papal guard against Garibaldi. He had also been a school teacher in London, and when he returned to Ireland, he later opened a tobacco factory in Cork. Following the failure of this business, he emigrated to Australia in 1885, leaving Terence and the other children in the care of their mother and his eldest daughter. Terence was educated by the Christian Brothers at the North Monastery School in Cork City.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Right, let's see what you remember of your Latin lesson yesterday. MacSwiney, we'll begin with you. I am.
Ego sum.
He is.
Ipse est.
She is.
Ea est.
You are.
Tu est.
We are.
Somos.
Although a good student, MacSwiney had to leave school at 15. With his father long gone to Australia and never to return, Terence had to help support the family. He became an accountancy clerk but continued his studies. Working full-time, he studied at the Royal University, now known as University College Cork, graduating in 1907 with a degree in mental and moral science. That's the study of the philosophy as well as engaging with certain fundamental philosophical problems such as the debate about free will, the nature of morality, the existence of God, logic, and the scope and limits of human knowledge. Also such subjects as political philosophy, ethics, and philosophy of mind. This enables students to specialize in the areas they have found most interesting and most suited to their skills.
MacSwiney's writings in the newspaper Irish Freedom brought into the attention of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. He was one of the founders of the Cork Brigade of the Irish Volunteers in 1913 and was president of the Cork branch of Sinn Féin. He founded the newspaper Fianna Fáil in 1914, but it was suppressed after only 11 issues. In April 1916, he was intended to be second in command of the Easter Rising in Cork and Kerry, but stood down his forces on the order of Owen MacNeill. That, believe me, is another chapter of history we need to discuss. Following the Rising, MacSwiney was imprisoned by the British government on the defence of the Realm Act in Reading and Wakefield Gaols until December 1916. In February 1917, he was deported from Ireland and was imprisoned in Shrewsbury and Bromyard internment camps until his release in June 1917. It was during his exile in Bromyard that he married Muriel Murphy of the Cork Distillery owning family. In November 1917, he was arrested in Cork for wearing an Irish Republican Army uniform and, inspired by the example of Thomas Ashe, went on a hunger strike for 3 days prior to his release. In the 1918 general election, MacSwiney was returned unopposed to the first Dáil Éireann as Sinn Féin representative for Mid-Cork, succeeding the national MP D. Sheehan. So now we are back to the question, how did MacSwiney become Lord Mayor?
As we told you at the start, he became Lord Mayor through tragic means. The death of his best friend, Thomas McCurtain, and it's wrong to call it a death for Thomas McCurtain, did not just die. Thomas McCurtain was assassinated. After midnight, somewhere between 12:10 a.m. and 1:15 on Saturday, March 20th, 1920, 2 black-faced men cracked down Thomas Davis Street, Blackpool. They watched in the dark shadows, stared at the windows of the house of their prey. Then they saw a bedroom light switch on. It was time. They made their way into the dark to number 40 and banged loudly on the door.
Open the door! Easy, open the door now! Open the bloody door!
No, please, please, no, no. Tomas, please. No. No, Tomas. No. No.
The Lord Mayor of Cork was shot dead in front of his family by assassins believed to be plain-clothed RAC constables. The killers fled into the dark night. The gunshots and the screaming children alerted neighbours. They were chased by McCurtain's brother-in-law, James Walsh. The assailants turned and fired shots at him, and he threw himself to the ground. Despite being within sight of the King Street Royal Irish Constabulary barracks, no arrests were ever made. Indeed, according to one account, the killers returned to the barracks when the job was done.
It later emerged that other armed men had put out the gas lights in the vicinity of the McCurtain house, while others stopped traffic in nearby streets. It was widely believed that the shooting was the work of RAC constables in revenge for the fatal shooting the day before of the constable James Murtagh in Cork City. Indeed, the inquest jury returned a verdict of willful murder against the RAC. Directed by the British government and Prime Minister David Lloyd George. It was one of the first killings in Cork during the Irish War of Independence, but far from the last. McCurtain is listed at a registry of fatalities from political violence in County Cork, number 22 out of 528, dead from 1919 until July 1921. In the early hours of 20th of March 1920, just 7 weeks before these men shot him in his own home, the current commandant of the Cork No. 1 Brigade of the IRA had been elected the city's Lord Mayor. Befitting the municipal office he held, his body was taken to lie in the state at the City Hall. Then the people of Cork City duly teamed in to pay their respects to their fallen leader. When it finally came time to close the door to the public mourners that Sunday evening, McCurtain's friend Terence MacSwiney stayed behind. He wanted to spend the night beside the coffin he had earlier shouldered up the steps. Over the course of 2 decades, the pair had forged such a bond of friendship that MacSwiney was godfather to McCurtain's son Tomas Og. At the non-cathedral the following day, MacSwiney again could not tear himself away from the casket of his friend. Long after the church had emptied, he remained in a kneeling position, praying before the altar like somebody transfixed.
On Monday, after the elongated funeral procession had wound its way through the grieving city to St. Finbarr Cemetery in Glasheen, he steeled himself to deliver an oration by the graveside. His short speech culminated in the line:
No matter how many lose their lives in the cause of their duty, as did the Lord Mayor, another will always be found to take the lead. This is not an occasion for many words, least of all a conventional of compliments and thanks. The circumstances of the vacancy in the office of Lord Mayor governed inevitably the filling of it, and I come here more as a soldier stepping into the breach than as an administrator to fill the first post. At a normal time, it would be your duty to find for this post the councillor most practical and experienced in public affairs. But the time is not normal. We see in the manner in which our late Lord Mayor was murdered an attempt to terrify us all. Our first duty is to answer that threat in the only fitting manner, by showing ourselves unterrified, cool, and inflexible for the fulfilment of our chief purpose, the establishment of the independence and integrity of our country, the peace and the happiness of our country. I was more closely associated than any other here with our late murdered friend and colleague, both before and since the event of Easter week, in prison and out of it, in the common work of love for Ireland, down to the hour of his death. For that reason, I take his place. It is, I think, though I say it, the only fitting answer to those who struck him down. Following from that, there is a further matter of importance, only less great. It touches the efficient continuance of our civic administration. If this recent unbearable aggravation of our persecution by our enemies should cause us to suspend voluntarily the normal discharge of our duties, it would help them very materially in their campaign to overthrow our cause. I feel the question of the future conduct of our affairs is all on our minds, and I think that I am voicing the general view when I say that the normal functions of our cooperative body must proceed. As far as in our power lies, uninterpreted with the efficiency and integrity of which our late civic head gives such brilliant promise, I don't wish to sound a personal note, but this much may be permitted under the circumstances. I made myself active in the selection of our late colleague for the office of Lord Mayor. He did not seek the honour and would not accept it as such, but when put to him as a duty, he stepped to his place like a soldier. Before his election, we discussed it together in the intimate way we discussed everything touching our common work since Easter week. We debated together what ought to be done and what could be done, keeping in mind, as in duty bound, not only the idea, line of action, but the practical line at the moment as well. That line he followed with an ability to success all his own. Gentlemen, you have paid tribute to him on all his sides. It will be my duty and steady purpose to follow that line as faithfully as in my power. Though no man in this council could hope to discharge its functions with his ability and his perfect grasp of public business in all details as though one harmonious whole. I have thought it necessary to touch on this normal duty of ours. Though, and it may seem strange to say it, I feel at the moment it is even a discretion. For the menace of our enemies hangs over us, and the essential immediate purpose is to show the spirit that animates us, and how we face the future. Our spirit is but to be moved, lively manifestation of the spirit in which we began the year. To work for the city in a new zeal inspired by our initial act when we dedicated it and formally attested our allegiance to bring by our administration of the city glory to our allegiance, and by working for our city's advancement with the constancy in all honourable ways, in her new dignity as one of the first cities in Ireland to work for, and if need be to die for. I would recall some words of mine on that day of our first meeting after the election of Lord Mayor. I realised that most of you in the minority here would be loyal to us, if doing so did not threaten your lives, but that you lacked the spirit who hope to join with us to complete the work of liberation so well begun. I allowed it to hear again, because I wish to point out again the secret of our strength and assurance of final victory. This contest of ours is not on our side, a rivalry of vengeance, but one of endurance. It is not they who can inflict most, but they who can suffer most will conquer. Though we do not abrogate our function to demand and see that evildoers and murderers are punished for their crimes, but it is conceivable that they could interrupt our course for a time. Then it becomes a question simply of trust in God and endurance. Those whose faith is strong will endure to the end and triumph. The shining hope of our time is that the great majority of our people are now strong in that faith. To you, gentlemen, in the minority here, I would address a word. I ask you again to take courage and hope. To me it seems, and I don't say to hurt you, that you have a lively faith in the power of the devil, and but little faith in God. But God is over us, and in His divine intervention we have perfect trust. Anyone surveying the events in Ireland for the past 5 years must see that it is approaching a miracle how our country has been preserved. God has permitted this to be, to try our spirits, to prove us worthy of a noble line, to prepare us for a great and noble destiny. You amongst us who have yet no vision of the future have been led astray by false prophet. The liberty for which we today strive is a sacred thing, inseparably entwined as body and soul with the spiritual liberty for which the Saviour of men died, and which is the inspiration and foundation of all just government, because it is sacred and the death for it akin to the sacrifice on Calvary, following far off but constant to that divine example. In every generation our best and bravest have died. Sometimes in our grief we cry out foolish and unthinking words. The sacrifice is too great, but it is because they were our best and bravest that they had to die. No lesser sacrifice could save us. Because of it our struggle is holy. Our battle is sanctified by their blood, and our victory is assured by their martyrdom. We, taking up the work they left incomplete, confident in God, offer in turn sacrifice from ourselves. It is not we who take innocent blood, but we offer it, sustained by the example of our immortal dead, and that divine example which inspires us for all the redemption in our country. Facing our enemies, we must declare our attitude simply. We ask for no mercy, and we will make no compromise. But to the divine author of mercy, we appeal for strength to sustain us, whatever the persecution, that we may bring our people victory in the end. The civilized world dares not continue to look on indifferent, but if the rulers of earth fail us, we have yet sure succour in the ruler of heaven, and though to some impatient hearts his judgment seems slow, they never fail, and when they fall, they are overwhelming and final.